So hopefully this will be the last in the series of videos. Because I know this is getting a little long in the tooth for you there, Dave. Let's see where we dropped off. Also, there was almost no there was almost no non-Christians in the Western world for a few decades. In the Western world a few decades ago. Okay, thanks for conceding that point. Even in the 50s and 60s, you could hardly study sexuality because of stupid Christian ethics that made everyone um, demonize it and call it pornography. No. Uh, who is the one that really broke? Who was the first one to study sexuality? It was Alfred Kinsey, right? And what more to sexuality is there besides consenting adults having sex? Um, well, there's wife swapping that got big in the 60s because of Kinsey and 70s, and that really went out of fashion quick. But Alfred Kinsey endorsed pedophilia and rape. Um, Look at all the sexual studies that were done. It is downright creepy. And sex ed does as much for sex as DARE did for drugs. It's sex is the most basic of human instincts. We need it to survive. Um, in fact, it did the opposite. Sex ed. I remember I went through it in the 90s, and it basically told us that we were going to get AIDS. And I knew plenty of people who couldn't wait to catch HIV because at least you would have it then. Because HIV was going to spread to everybody, and they really instilled that fear. So no, it actually fucked up a whole generation of people, especially inner city people in inner city Chicago, because sex ed was mandatory, and we were living in the epidemic. And guess what? HIV/AIDS didn't break out of its initial risk groups. The risk groups were high. I remember after first time I had sex, I remember in my teens, couldn't even drive yet. I'd have a friend drive me. Went and got an HIV test, and they said, "Well, why are you coming?" And they were kind of looking back. They were surprised, and I mean, not even looking back, but I remember being like, "What the like?" These people are just like, "What are you doing here, kid? Why are you here?" You had sex with a woman. Okay. So what? That unprotected vaginal sex with a woman. So, like, I remember being like, like I was scared to death because I was going to catch HIV, and then die of AIDS. And they said, oh, at most you can live. You can live. It's better now. You can live. Possibly 7 years, 3 to 7 years with treatment. That's what they told us. So yeah, sex ed, really good thing, and it was kicked off by who? Alfred Kinsey, a sadistic and enthusiastic supporter of pedophilia, and I mean supporter as in that he paid men to rape children. Look it up. Look up. I'll put a link to the documentary in the description. No, you don't think human civilization had a handle on sex before 1950s? What about the Catholic countries that? I mean, it's only the Northern European, the stern Northern European, the cold Northern European Catholic countries like the Italians, the Spanish, the Brazilians, the Mexicans, the Nicaraguans, the Argentines, the Colombians don't seem to have a. We have something called Carnival or Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday, where you get all those things out. And again, um, since there's a difference between the sacred and the profane in Catholic societies, not in Protestant ones, there had always been homosexuals in, I mean, we didn't have to hide their identity in Catholic countries. This was mainly a Protestant hang-up, and one that came out of Northern European frigidness. Go to a place like Sweden or Norway and go, hey, how's it going? Just to a stranger. You're standing at a bus stop and go, hey, how's it going? Or try to talk to somebody randomly. They freeze up and they're like, or it's like, it's creepy, man. It's it's like they still don't. They're supposedly more or less Christian than us in the Americas, and especially like any Latin American country, and they're so frigid and tied up, they don't know how to be intimate with people. They can't be, you go, you can't just meet up with people like strangers and be like, hey, what's happening, man? And just be talking to them or smile at them or like, ask how their day's going. They'll freak the fuck out. So yeah, that did a lot of good. Yeah, individualizing everybody and having everybody this is ridiculous. Or look at all the nihilism now with we have 72 genders now. Men don't know how to be men, women don't know how to be women. There's no rites of passage. Thank God that the Mexicans still have the quinceañera. But this is what I mean, the breakdown of rituals and worldview. And this is why we have people just, everything's going to shit. There's no transference from a boy to a man, right? Or for a girl to a woman. So, it's just a date now. So, no, the 50s and 60s fucked everything up. The peace, the hippie 1960s, hey man, let's smoke pot. And what did that turn into? That same generation turned into hard-nosed capitalist 80s. So, no, it didn't work. Who should have been a non-Christian scientist if there are hardly any non-Christian? Strange argument. I don't understand those sentences. Who should have been a non-Christian scientist if there hardly were any non-Christian? Strange argument. Strange questioning. I don't know if that translates just quite from German. Same goes for all advances. If there are hardly any Christians, how can they do anything, especially if they are demonized for not saying, yes, the Bible is correct every time, all the time? Well, when do Christians say the Bible is correct every time, all the time? You're mixing up sola scriptura, which is a new phenomenon, with Christianity. I don't understand any of this. This is a jumble of nonsense. Demonized. Who's demonized? Non-believers? How? Why? Because they're unbaptized? That's a sad thing. That's not demonized. Actually, that is a huge problem that Christianity, like any religion, brought us. As soon as the whole society beliefs, they suddenly start to take away your freedom to speak against it, just like about Galileo. No, again, this is a common knowledge thing, like with Constantine, or that the Saracens were so much more advanced than the stupid Westerners during the medieval period. No. Can you tell me why was Galileo? Galileo was actually friends with the Pope. Do you know that? And he's talked with the Pope about gravity and heliocentrism. And Copernicus made the argument long before Galileo about heliocentrism. The Pope had accepted it. He was his friend. when he was, I think he was a bishop at the time, but when he became Pope and you had the Protestant Reformation kick off, suddenly you had to lock down on everything. And Galileo wasn't heliocentrism. It was him speaking about gravity in the terms that he put it in. And the fact that also he was so bombastic, he wasn't persecuted for heliocentrism. Are you Wikipediaing this stuff? Do you know about history? Darwin had the same problem and is still in fundamentalist parts of the U.S. pretend like any relevant number of scientists who would not understand and trust the theory of evolution. There are multiple theories of evolution. Yeah, and like you said, extreme minority of people, of Christians, reject evolution. So that goes to Protestant sola scriptura garbage that came out of Northern Europe, right. The Roman Catholics actually wanted to accept evolution in 1922. It's factual, but they said, "Oh wait, hold on, we'll do our inquest," and wanted to make the Big Bang dogma as soon as Lemaitre, a Roman Catholic priest, came up with it. And the atheist argument was for an infinite universe, not one that began only 13 billion years ago, 13.5. In ethics, I don't want to make these chunks too long. Shit. All right, let me see if I can get this down. In ethics, how do you define and advance in ethics? I still got no answer to that question. We have ethics, other people have ethics. The Bible has some pretty fucked up ethics. How do you determine better or worse? They work. How do you find they work? Define working ethics. The Bible has some fucked up ethics. What do you mean, the Bible? You keep using this. What are you talking about, the Bible? We have the Pentateuch, which some people call the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. Then we have basically a court chronicle. Well, we have writings like Joshua and Judges, Ruth, and then when we get to Kings, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Kings, or 1st, 2nd Samuel, 2nd, 3rd Kings, that's a court chronicle, right? That was ongoing, and it's just telling you what the shit is going on, what's happening during these reigns of kings. And then you get the prophets who are writing during these various times, and then you have where Ezra, Chronicles 1 and 2, and Ezra and Nehemiah, which is a recapping of a different writer going through and summarizing a lot of the shit. And then you have the Deuterocanon, also known as the intertestamental period. And then you have the New Testament, which is 4 bios. You could say 5, include Acts. And bios is a category of text. A smattering of epistles, some encyclicals, and an apocalypse. What do you mean, when the Philistines were worshiping Dagon, or the Canaanites were worshiping Moloch and sacrificing children to them? Yeah, ending of human sacrifice. Yeah, that's terrible. That ethics, ending of temple prostitution, of forced prostitution. Yeah, that's terrible that we ended that. Human sacrifice in general, ending that's terrible. Ending slavery, that's terrible. Even the modern ending of slavery, it was from Christian arguments. Guys like Wilberforce, or William Wilberforce, and all those priests in the Catholic Church that I mentioned before. I'll get into that again. I think I'll take one more video because this is getting very long. I don't know what is this fucking part 5.